Opportunity Hub. And we're also going to be online. It's a hybrid event. If you're here in person, please grab something to eat. We've got Panera over here. We've got water. So please feel free to help yourself throughout the evening. I'm going to start with a little bit of housekeeping. Daniel Pentecost is running our show tonight. So he's going to give folks in the room and those watching online a few instructions so that we can manage this hybrid event. And then we'll get started, okay?
Okay, if you will bear with me 1 second while I step down from the booth.
And while we wait, we've got Mark Talbert here who can, hey there, come on in, who is hosting us tonight. And I'd love to give him a moment to just talk a little bit about what all is going on here. I'm sure as you came in, if you're here in person, as you drove into the parking lot, you see there is a lot of activity happening here at the Opportunity Hub. So I just want to give Mark a moment to share a little bit more about the great work that's happening here in the community.
Thank you. We're glad you're here. We're glad y'all are here. So real quickly, what all's happening here, you see the construction going on. That is primarily for the redevelopment of that building over there that was the old Sunday school building here into a preschool. That becomes a preschool for 3-year-olds and under for about 70 to 75 children. It'll be run by Bright Future Learning Center. Pretty excited about that and the interaction we can have with those families. Downstairs, underneath us in the basement, you go down, which is where the restrooms are, another housekeeping item. You might need a restroom. It's at the bottom of the stairs. And that's the headquarters for our Moms Moving Forward program. It's a cohort-based program for single moms in the community, and they're in it for a year. Actually get paid to be a part of it, so they get assistance and mentorship and stabilizing their housing, their incomes, their education for their children, their mental health, and their own physical health. So that's a pretty exciting program that we get to be involved in. Then we're also involved in affordable housing. Some of you may know we just opened Evoke Living at Westerly Hills right behind the Walmart, 156 all affordable units. Pretty excited about that. Got to move 6 families in yesterday, and they moved out of a motel into there, and just a great blessing for those families. So that's who we are. We're Freedom Communities, and we're really glad y'all are here tonight. There's been, Officer John was here Tuesday night with her group, and there's been something in here every night this week, and that's what makes us happy.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to Freedom Communities for the work you're doing. Now I'll turn it over
All
to...
right. Thank you for letting the wizard have a moment.
Daniel.
Sorry, for the Zoom participants, thank you for waiting a moment as we got you into the meeting. If you are watching this virtually, if you have questions during the meeting, you can text them to area code 704-420-8325. That number is scrolling across the bottom of your screen. Again, that is 704-420-8325, and they will be relayed in real time to the people who are speaking here tonight. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who don't know, I'm the founder of CLT Geek, and it is my distinct honor to help Councilmember Watlington pull this off tonight. This is the first of what I hope will be many virtual meetings that also are hybrid meetings. So we have Zoom attendees, and we have human attendees, and we love that you're here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. What he did not tell you is he's also the president of Nearby Parkview Neighborhood Association. They're doing great work as well. I love it. So we've got a full agenda tonight. We are going to have an awesome panel discussion with many of our faith community partners. We've got some amazing community leaders here, and you'll hear more from them later on and what they're doing with their organizations throughout the community as faith community leaders. But we're also going to hear from our staff. How many of you remember our Corridors of Opportunity launch last year? We launched on West Boulevard, and we launched on Beatty's Ford Road. And Corridors of Opportunity was a brand new program with the city focused on reinvesting and investing more heavily in our previously disadvantaged communities. So if you think about, we know in Charlotte, we talk about the Crescent and the Wedge, and we talk about communities that exist along some of those corridors like Freedom, Wilkinson, West Boulevard, Beatty's Ford, I-85, and Sugar Creek. And we at the city really wanted to take a more holistic view of that. And so last year we launched a $25 million program called Corridors of Opportunity, and we have a wonderful, wonderful program manager that I'm so very excited about. I cannot say enough good things about her, Miss Sherry Smith, and she is going to be giving us an overview of where we are a year later. So some exciting updates about that are near and dear to my heart. We're also going to hear the next steps with the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, which is a continuation of the COP 2040 plan. There are some big, big, big items coming up in October as it relates to place type mapping and how that impacts how and where we grow in the city. So that's very important as well. But first, before we kick it off, I do want to give an opportunity to our homes representative to give an update on their program and also to give you a little more information about how you can access their resources.
There are salary requirements. For example, if your household size of one, your income can exceed $47,000. Okay, and we go all the way up to, and basically you can, when you're filling out your application, you're just gonna put how many people in your household, and the only proof we actually need is just your proof of income. we take your statement on who's in your house. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay. I would be remiss if I did not at least ask one of my officers to come up and talk a little bit about what's going on here in the city or give folks opportunity to ask some questions. So I'm going to ask the captain if he'd like to come on up.
Good evening. My name, that's all right. My name is Brian Frohl. I'm the captain over the Westover Division. Our office is over off of West Boulevard. So I cover a decent portion of District 3, but not all of it. So I can't speak to maybe all of your questions, but I'm happy to field any questions you may have right now. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My question is, there's been an uptick in crime in the city of Charlotte, especially in Steel Creek area. And you got it. And I wanted to know what is being done about the uptick in crime so far as infrastructure, and what's being done, and how can we as citizens help?
Okay, great question. And yes, I mean, and you're not alone in noticing that. Unfortunately, we're dealing with it and trying to figure out ways to combat it all across the city, so you're not alone in that. One of the big things we're working with within the department is, you know, I'm over Westover Division. We border up to Steel Creek Division, which is where you live, and we're making sure we're communicating on a daily basis, because the crime that you're seeing is also impacting the residents in Westover Division. So we're making sure we've got good communication between the divisions, between the investigative units, so that we're able to work together as a team to address y'all's concerns. As far as citizens, the best thing I can tell you is, you know better than we do what looks out of place when you notice a problem. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we had a citizen contact us. She had noticed a new resident move into a house next to them, started noticing cars coming all nights of the hour. And we were able to work with her to address that before it got out of hand. So citizens are the best source of information we've got. You guys live in your neighborhoods, you know your neighbors, you know what looks out of place and what doesn't. So your help and your information is what really helps. But as far as infrastructure, I think the biggest thing right now for us is working on communication within the division, across division lines, so that we work together as a team and work more efficient to address the violent crime. Yes, ma'am. Anyone else?
All right, you got off easy tonight. Our community officers will tell you that sometimes it's a Pinkney's like, yes, indeed, yes, indeed. By the way, shout out to our community officers that are here. If you'll just wave your hand. These guys are working day in and day out. They know their communities, they know their leaders, and they're constantly, if they're not getting questions at neighborhood meetings, they're getting emails from my office saying that somebody's got an issue, and they get after it. So we appreciate the work that you all do. All right, so now I'm going to give you a choice. Would you like to hear the Faith Community Panel discussion next, or would you like to hear updates for UDO or updates on the corridors of opportunity? Raise your hand for 1, 2, or 3. Faith discussion first. Okay. UDO. Nobody likes the UDO. That's terrible. Corridors of opportunity update. All right. I'm going to ask our pastors and our faith community leaders to come on up to the panel. We've got 3 or 4 here in the room. And then we've got 2 more online. If you need another chair, we will grab one for you. He right here. Oh, you came on in. Good. Oh, fantastic. I'm so excited. You want to move? Or you good? You good? Fantastic. I'm loving it. Oh, okay. I see you, the press. Rude. Okay. This is so exciting. I have to tell you, I met each of you individually, and just to see it all together. I'm excited to what this conversation is going to be about, and also the connections that are going to come out of this. So with that, I'd like to start with introductions. I do have a microphone. If you don't mind passing it back and forth, we can get you some sanitizer if you like. But we'll start with introductions. Please let us know your name, your faith community you represent, and we'll start with that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Terrence Grooms. I pastor the Progressive Baptist Church on Clanton Road.
I'm Otto Harris. I pastor St. Mark's United Methodist Church, Clanton Road.
Yes, indeed.
Great evening. My name is Herbert Crump. I serve as the presiding bishop of the Mount Calvary Holy Church of America, and our international headquarters is located in Highland Business Park on Tyvola Road here in Charlotte.
Good evening. Monty Witherspoon, pastor of Still Creek Amy Zion Church in Southwest Charlotte, and I pastor Sister Keo.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Walter Bowers. I pastor Ebenezer Baptist Church, Still Creek, located on Irwin Road.
Got 2 panelists online. We've got Pastor Kevin Richardson. Would you like to introduce yourself? Thank you, sir. And then we've got Reverend Tony Williams. Oh, I think you're on mute still. There you go.
Hello, everybody. Reverend Tony Williams. I'm here on behalf of Great Mount Sinai with that.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, we will kick it off. I've got a few questions, but obviously, as always, if you've got a question here in the audience or if you've got a question and you're watching online, please feel free to raise your hand here in person or shoot us a text so that we can get your questions answered. So, you all have already introduced yourself and told us who you represent. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the work at each one of your organizations. So if you want a popcorn, everybody doesn't have to answer every question, but I'd like to start there to just learn a little bit more about what your priority areas are so that the community can have an understanding of how we can join up with you in the work.
Guess I'll go first since I have the mic. One of the things that we tried to do, especially in the height of pandemic and protests, was have difficult conversations with some of our community leaders. For me, I have a unique perspective as it relates to social justice issues because I served with CMPD for 7 years. I was 3.5 on patrol. Matter of fact, I started trembling. I believe I saw a former supervisor. Oh man, I gotta behave. But but I was there for 3.5 on patrol and 3.5 in the police attorney's office. So it provided me a unique perspective. I can always find a room where somebody doesn't like me. It's cool. I was able to have some unique conversations and then figure out how we were going to respond. So some of the ways that we responded to some of the things in the community, I truly believe the path forward is education and entrepreneurship. So we offered some entrepreneurship opportunities, some training for entrepreneurs, not just training, but also ways that they could access income through programs such as like NC Idea and things of that nature. Because one of the things, because I'm an entrepreneur myself, I have my own law practice with a couple of partners. And the thing that we had the biggest challenge with was finding resources. So when we were talking about social justice, I said, hey, I tell you what, if you become a business owner and if you become an employer, I truly believe economically you can change your neighborhood a lot faster than any other avenue, with probably the exception being education. So we had a wonderful turnout. It was virtual back then because the pandemic was really crazy, but we had a wonderful turnout for that experience. And then also on top of that, we educated individuals as relates to voters. Didn't try to tell them how to vote, but we had people like former Chief Justice Sherry Beasley come to the church and speak about the role of the justice system and the role of the judiciary as it relates to social justice. So last year we did a lot of educating on the various candidates from both parties, just to make sure that people understood the issues and understood the opportunities. And those are things that we hope to be able to continue next year, educating individuals as it relates to what's going on, and then entrepreneurship, because we have a business incubator inside the church as well. So we were able to actually bring in an individual who had a vision and said, I just need a shot. And I was like, hey, this is no longer a Sunday school room. It's a business incubator. So so we're able to do stuff like that, and it's been great so far.
Monty Witherspoon is a perfect segue. A lot of the issues that I see which kind of prioritize our programming, all the systemic issues, as far as I see it, are really couched in poverty. And until we address poverty, and quite frankly, and maybe even radically abolish it, we're going to continue to see a lot of systemic issues in our country. Martin Luther King said, I think it was 1961, Nobel Peace Prize speech, said, there's nothing new about poverty. What is new, however, is that we have the resources to get rid of it. And so whether it's education, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's a living wage, whether it's health access to health care, child care services, whatever the case may be, transportation even, a lot of these barriers to success and wellness. So whether it's folks that show up who need food, whether it's people who need help with their child care, whatever the case may be, it seems to always be couched and based in poverty. So whether it's economic development or growth or opportunities that we can provide. So I think if we talk about how we, in a city like this that is polarized economically, if we could address issues of poverty, housing, education. I know these are not the responsibility of one governmental agency, but if we can have those conversations, begin to address it, even in the faith community, and how we can collaborate.
Thanks, sir. With Mount Calvary Holy Church of America, we're a 92-year-old organization located in 18 states and 7 countries. And recently, as a result of leadership transition, we relocated our international headquarters here to Charlotte, back actually to the state of which our origin was established back in 1929 in Winston-Salem. And so our position is, as we encourage every church in every state and throughout the world, is to partner with those within the local communities, law enforcement, nonprofit organizations, and other churches in order to support their efforts in meeting the needs of not only their local congregation, but throughout the community as well. And so our intent as an organization is to partner with pastors such as those that are represented here tonight physically and virtually, as well as to become acutely aware of the programs that are offered throughout the city, such as homes that I was pleasantly introduced to tonight, along with others that I pray will be informed of as well, to see how we as an organization can support either through financial resources or through manpower or volunteerism. When our conferences are here, ironically, July of 2022, we're bringing our international convocation to Charlotte, being held at the Sheraton La Meridian uptown. And so we'll be here for 5 days, and throughout that time, we will be engaging in some act of community service, either through volunteerism and or financial donations. But that is something that we will continue throughout our tenure here. So tonight is a information gathering session for myself that we will take back to our executive team so that we can begin rather to engage in community service and partnership. So that's where we are.
I love that, especially as we do our corridors of opportunity update. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities, especially given where our churches are located, to be able to connect there. So I'm looking forward to that.
I too am here listening. I have my listening ear and hoping to take some things back to our congregation. But we realize that the pandemic has caused turmoil in many households and many hearts. And we've done all that we could, all that we can, still doing all that we can to offer some relief, immediate relief to some of the basic needs, food, shelter, and those kind of things. We also find that mental health has been severely impacted during this time. So we're trying to find ways to make connections and give folks an opportunity to reconnect and re-engage in ways that we haven't been able to connect and engage for the past 18 months. So we know that's real. I personally am partnering with a young organization that's developing now called the 704 Kings. It's a mentoring group, and it's a group of young men, younger than I. I'm the old man of the group that gets to hang around them. But they're bringing young men together, establishing relationships, is giving them a different view of what relationship looks like, another picture of manhood so that they can have something else to look after. So I've enjoyed that, using games, using chess, using racquetball, things like that to engage and to foster conversation and relationship.
And very similar to my brother, Pastor Harris, at Progressive Baptist Church, our goal, our focus is really about building relationships. Progressive has a long history of being an aid in a very impoverished community. And the one thing I've learned is that programs don't change people. You give them stuff, you give them stuff. They use your stuff, but they stay in the same habits. But if we have right relationships, if I have a right relationship with my neighbor, I won't steal from my neighbor. If I have a right relationship with my police department, I'll respect my police department. And so we focus on building relationships through partnerships. We partner with the youth program, Center 360, which is mentoring young people. We partnered with RJ in feeding the community. Our goal is just to build those relationships so that we can get to know each other. I even work with a group of multicultural pastors so we can bridge the racial divide. And it's not about programs. It's just about getting to know each other. If I know you and love you, I won't hurt you. And that's our whole focus.
Love that. Pastor or Reverend Tony Williams or Pastor Kevin?
The vision, but I'm here to listen, to observe, and see what I can learn, and take it back to the pastor. The homes presentation is certainly something that we would be interested in. If you could send that information to the church, that would be great.
And that's Greater Mount Sinai. They got you.
Greater Mount Sinai.
Pastor Kevin Richardson, Nation for Community Church. Listening to the pastors and reverends and share what they're actually focusing on is absolutely great. Our primary focus is to really look at the community. His first proposal is about outreach, and for me, the goal would be inreach as well. So the emphasis is about discipleship, it's about worship, and it's about evangelism. And so in that, one of the things that we've been steadily working on is participating in what we call Moles and Fishes. Some of you are very where we're actually a site, a mobile pantry for people who are indigent or just down on their luck going through this pandemic. We're able to get free food. We are actually able to refer people to the Moles and Fishes, and they simply drive through on our property. We fill up their car with food items, and they're able to keep moving on. The other thing that we've done is we all know about Tent City. When Tent City was dismantled and they relocated those who were homeless to some hotels down here off of Nation Ford Road, what we did was we adopted that particular population, and we continue to make lunches for them on a monthly and weekly basis. And literally was just trying to fill a stopgap solution, if you would, to make sure people had food that they can enjoy, particularly lunch. And in addition to that, we've adopted the local elementary school, and we're working with the principal and the social worker to try to identify families that are indigent and try to articulate what are some of their needs and how can we meet those needs. Because here's the thing, it's not about giving a handout, it's about giving a hand up. And what I've come to learn is that people don't mind change. They mind being changed. And the goal is to cause some transformative change in thinking, in terms of behavior, in terms of our character, our conduct, and the whole conversation. And so the emphasis is to start with the school, work with some of these youth and these families, and as we already heard several times, forge solid relationships. In addition to that, we're about to ramp up with Roof Above, which is formerly Room in the Inn, so that we can house those who are going to be needing some shelter during the winter months. And in addition to that, taking care of the families that are in need for Thanksgiving and Christmas, those kinds of things. And the other thing that I love is that, again, getting people together. The pandemic has caused us to be isolated. It's caused us to be shut in, if you would. And one of the exciting things that we were able to do is have a food truck event, a family food truck event, where we set up tents for the kids, and it was open to the community. And I want to tell you, we had an absolute blast. It was absolutely great. We had 5 food trucks that were here, and people came out. We had some line dancing. The seniors were able to play bingo. There was water ice. There was dessert. And like I said, it was just a great time to get people together. Again, in order to speak into someone's life and to be able to give them some encouraging word, you have to have a trusting, meaningful relationship. And that's what we're striving to do. As it relates to some of our youth, we were holding in our Life Center 5-on-5 basketball, where we opened up our Life Center so that we could bring the kids in on Fridays between the hours of 5 to 9 so that they could play basketball and compete with one another in a very safe environment to let off some of that energy. And then provide them with some light collations and some Gatorade and some snacks and things of that nature. And also hold those young men accountable, because it was about social courtesies and being respectful while we're actually working together. And so for Nation Forward, it's really about not only developing the people that are members of this particular congregation, but it's also about reaching out to the community and recognizing we both have needs, albeit different, but we have to be able to meet those and do it in a cohesive way. And so we're excited about being able to do that.
Demographics of that has shifted very quickly, and it's teaching us as a congregation. Now, though we are a primarily African American church, we do have some families that are not African American, but we are part of a connection, United Methodist connection, which gives us a natural connection with some other churches. And likewise, we've had conversations, and we're, as we're noticing our neighborhood change, because Planet Park used to be the way it's going, look like it's going back to now. So we're noticing the shift. We're noticing the bike riders. We're noticing the folks, pushing strollers down the street. It's totally different than 6 or 7 years ago, and we're doing.
I think it's universal to recognize that the church collectively, regardless of denomination or reformation, the church universal has always been looked upon as the holy hub of resources and support. So whenever families are in need, whenever there's grief of loss of job, loss of life, the pastor in the church is the first place that those families, whether they're a member of that local church or not, will always depend upon. And as a result, as many have mentioned, of COVID and other challenges that we're facing universally, the loss of jobs, economic challenges, things of that nature, the church has had to learn, starting with the leadership, we've had to learn, in the words of John Donne, that no man is an island entire of itself, meaning we must be humble enough and bold enough to establish partnerships and relationships with other churches and other organizations in order to address and support the needs of the total community. Whether we want to identify it as or not, but gentrification is happening not just in Charlotte. I actually live in Rock Hill and pastor in Rock Hill. It's happening everywhere. The face of the communities from when many of us probably started pastoring our local church in that community is drastically changing. But the good news is, because we are of the faith community, our support and assistance cannot practice discrimination based upon appearance. We must be willing to meet that need, but in order for us to meet the need, we must equip ourselves as a church with adequate resources. And so that means we as a church will have to learn to incorporate technology, not only in our worship, but in our outreach and in our community support. We must learn that we cannot rely solely on the offering plate in order to help meet the needs of a needy community, because many of the offering plate values are decreasing because of loss of job and things of that nature. So I think as we are doing tonight, coming together and becoming aware of us bonding together as a universal collection of ministry leaders and faith community participants in order to meet the needs of the entire community, because problems don't discriminate, people do.
I have a unique perspective though, because I've come full circle. I served the neighborhood where I grew up in, and so Still Creek has changed drastically. Matter of fact, when I grew up, the Walmart on South Tryon used to be a barn. I'm going to say it was cows. There were cows out there, so it has shifted dramatically. I think that area probably has grown more than the county. I believe. I'm not certain, but so they're mostly. I'll just be recapitulating what y'all said.
Oh yeah, real quick. The best thing I know how to do is throw a party. Now I'm surrounded by three makers. They had some unholy parties. But your discernment is hard. But one of the things, honestly, I agree with everything that we did that was successful. It's just the simple stuff like festivals. So we got one coming up on November the 6th, free to the community. That's literally the only time, honestly, I feel like I see what Steel Creek actually looks like. So like people riding down the road, they'll see horses or something, they'll come over and I get to meet people, we get to have a good time. So that's been one of the ways that I've been able to engage and meet new people in the community, and that's one thing that I hope we are able to continue build those relationships as fast as possible.
And what time do you have the details for
Yes, November the 6th, 12 to 4 p.m. We're going to have a Ferris wheel. We're going to have some horses. It's free. Lottie-dottie and everybody. And pastors, I'm going to make sure we network. And I get the information from you about some other stuff that's happening that weekend. So thanks.
And just checking in with Reverend Williams and Pastor Richardson. Did you have anything to add?
Well, I would simply say that it is so true when the pandemic hit that with the burgeoning crop of technology, we have to leverage that technology. One of the things that we've been doing, we've always, for example, live streamed our services. And so it was not necessarily a heavy lift for us when the pandemic hit. I will tell you that we are still reaching out to our folks because we recognize that the pandemic has shifted the landscape of what we would normally consider worship on a given Sunday. Or throughout the course of the week, for that matter. And so when we think about how we operate under the auspices of sort of digital missionaries. You have to be a digital missionary when you're reaching someone. Someone conceivably might be a member of your fellowship living in a different state. And how do you meet their needs? How do you continue to take care of them? And how do you minister to them and so forth? And I think that requires us to continue to think outside the box in terms of how we form relationships. The other thing is to leverage the social media platforms in the way of communication. You're going to deal with multi-generation in your church. And for us, that's how we're trying to operate. Consider our more mature saints who might be a little bit adverse to technology, so we want to help them gradually ease into that. And certainly the millennials leverage the technology because that's how they like to communicate and how they talk. And so with the change of the landscape, being here for just about 6 or 5 years, literally have seen a lot of changes with the landscape of Steel Creek in particular, as I lived down in the Palisades area. And I can tell you that it has changed dramatically. But our role is to continue to leverage the technology, to continue to outreach to people, and to go back to the basics. Let's go out and take the good news to folks and to talk to them about the Lord who loves people and who's willing to engage people in some wonderful, robust dialogue.
Good evening. My name is Angela Edwards. I represent the Springfield community. It's an old community. I inherited my house from my father, which is transitioned. And so I got a question for the pastors. If we know as the pandemic had hit, our way of worship now has become a very individual one that a lot of times we seek God for ourselves. And a lot of times as before the pandemic, we depended on the pastor to take us to prayer. We got something going on, we would call the pastor. Instead of knowing that we have a dialogue, we have a telephone that reaches heaven ourselves. So this is what I want to say tonight. What the word say, know who is able among you. A lot of pastors today, since the pandemic, if they of God in this era, in this season, have shifted to a deeper level of communicating with God. And first, we got to be utmost honest with ourselves. You know what I'm saying? The title of pastor does not mean that we're above everybody, because come on, we got some problems going on too. So as the community of Springfield, we are in desperate need of real men and women of God to stand up and help us to fight our battles with generational curses, poverty, health situations, all type of negativities that would hinder us from going to be forth what God has called us to be. In this era now that we are building houses and we're doing everything, but I say to people, what profits the man to gain the world but lose his soul? So tonight, I'm just asking y'all to really pray for Springfield community and the people of God there. Let them raise up, because now they feel like they're being forgotten because the neighborhood's so old and new communities are on the uprise. They're looking more at them. But we were there before they were there, okay? So just pray for us, please.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments right at the moment? Go ahead, Ben.
So while CMPD is still here, let me find the question that came in for them. What programs does CMPD have to support gunshot victims who do not die? Is there an opportunity to assist that individual to prevent retaliation and further violence?
There are multiple resources out there. I would encourage that person to reach out to the detective that's handling the case, because they'll know the ins and outs of it, especially when it comes to the potential for retaliation. That's obviously always a concern for us, is to interrupt that cycle of violence. There's also a state resource for victims of violent crime that can help with compensation. So I would just encourage the person to reach out to their detective, whoever's assigned to the case, because there's a lot of different things as far as specifics that would dictate what that person is available for, what resources are out there. But the main thing, especially with that consideration of retaliation, have that open communication with the detective assigned to that so that we can help interrupt that cycle of violence and not have the retaliation.
Also, I'm going to ask Ms. Oliver if you could jot down, we can certainly send out from our office the information. I know that the City of Charlotte has recently launched a hospital partnership with the healthcare system specifically targeted at interrupting retaliatory violent crime by going straight to those victims of gun violence. And so we'll get more information out to you. If you're signed up, and if you're not, please sign up for the neighborhood organization contact list. I know that an email was sent today. I believe Philip Freeman sent one encouraging folks to get signed up there, and you will get updates. I think we got another question here.
I have one question for the pastors. How, as community leaders, how can we help you guys? Now, I have to brag on my pastors just a little bit because they got Clinton Road on lockdown. They took care of us in the pandemic. They feed our seniors every week. They've offered to allow us to have precinct meetings there. So, but what can we do to help you, one, get your programs out or whatever services you need from us?
No, we could do it a lot better than what we're doing it. But I do thank you for reaching out and allowing us to reach back. But it's about relationship. How do we establish this relationship? How do we? The walls have been knocked down in the church now. The walls don't mean anything in the church, and the church was never the building anyway. So now we're discovering that the church is not the building. The church is the people. So how can we become the people together? So that's my hope. How do we on a more recurring basis? We may have to do it with technology right now, but one way or the other, you reach into my world, I reach into your world, and we create a world together. That's the way I see
it. And again, I agree with Dr. Harris. For me, it's two things. First, hold us accountable, because sometimes we get a pass, and we should not. But the other thing is, not only do I ask that you hold us accountable, but in helping us, make us aware of that which we don't see, because you are boots on the ground. And even though our churches are in that community, you still have a closer contact because that's your next door neighbor. You know that child across the street. And while we may see them once it's not even once a week anymore, once a month, once a quarter, you see them every day. And so when you share that, hey, Pastor, this is what's going on. How can we attack this? I might not have the answer right then, but we'll pray about it and we'll find it out. So do those two things for me, and that helps me tremendously.
I think that was a great opportunity to segue as we talk about what can we do as citizens to help the church. I'd love to hear now from Cherry Smith on Corridors of Opportunity. I know some of you mentioned wanting to understand a little bit more about what we're doing through the city and how you can plug in. So I'd love it if you could hang out with me for a little while, and I'll turn it over to Cherry to talk about corridors. If you got any questions or any comments during that time, definitely we can continue the conversation.
Well, good evening, everyone. Sorry I'm not able to be there in person. The space looks absolutely beautiful, but I am very happy that I'm able to join you virtually tonight to give you a quick update about the city's Corridors of Opportunity program. I do have a presentation, Councilmember Watlington, or I can generally speak, whatever floats your boat.
Oh, if you've got visuals, that'd be great for those of us here in the room.
All right.
In the meantime, were there any other questions or comments in the room?
thank you for inviting me, us, and having the vision for a session like this. I've seen the plan for the city, and not everything in the plan asks what the church is thinking. So thank you for including us.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure.
All right. Just wanted to give some space in case there were questions from the last panel. Thank you guys so much. So again, my name is Sherry Smith. I work in the Economic Development Department for the City of Charlotte. I am the manager of the city's Corridors of Opportunity program. So as Councilmember Watlington said earlier, there are 6 corridors of opportunity within the City of Charlotte. It includes Fayetteport Road, the Freedom Wilkinson area, West Boulevard, the I-85 and Cedar Creek area, North Graham Street, North Tryon area, and then Central and Albemarle. So the Corridors of Opportunity program is really a demonstration of the city's commitment to support equitable investment in our communities. We call it our all-in approach. We're looking to invest in neighborhood revitalization in a way that is very holistic and facilitates the ability for long-time residents to stay in place, while also catalyzing growth within these specific targeted areas. In order to make this all-in approach a reality, it requires a high level of cross-collaborative efforts between the City of Charlotte as well as with our external stakeholders and partners. And we all work together to develop and deploy our resources in a way that's very tailored to the unique needs of all of the corridors. So I said this is a cross-collaborative effort, and really that means that we are working together to ensure that we support great communities. Great communities have adequate infrastructure. It has to have affordable housing, mobility options. It's safe. So in order to get to great communities and support great communities, we do that through intentional investment. So we ensure that as we look at how can we support our corridors of opportunity, we want to do that in a way that will really catalyze future growth. We also measure our success by analyzing our data, and then we also leverage the expertise of all of the folks in the room to make sure that we're making decisions that are reflective of community goals, but will also support, as I said, future growth. So our approach to this work is very much community focused and data driven. So it's typically a 3-step process. We take time at the very beginning when we approach a corridor to understand the landscape. That includes doing an audit of all the previous plans from our planning department that have been done for the area. We look at our quality of life data, and we also reach out to all of the different engagement arms of the departments in the City of Charlotte to get an understanding of what are people saying now, what's information you're hearing on the ground, what are some of the common concerns that you're hearing as you're going to neighborhood events or community meetings. After that, we develop our strategic approach. For District 3 and West Boulevard, that was a very comprehensive process that was done in partnership and collaboration with the residents of the West Boulevard corridor, as well as the West Boulevard Neighborhood Coalition. A playbook is really a process to understand the market from an economic development perspective, but also understand community goals and what does the community see for itself over the next 3 to 5 years. Once we have all of those pieces in place, we understand current context, we understand current community vision, we move into our implementation phase. And that's when we start to deploy city dollars in a way that's really coordinated. And we look at how can we leverage timing of the deployment of those resources to really maximize the impact of our investments. So we operate across 3 themes for Corridors of Opportunity. And it speaks to the goals of the program. And as we look at those investments for the corridor, we want to make sure that they are kind of falling into these common themes. The first one being cultivate prosperity. That means that we support each corridor with the resources and services that it needs to set the corridor up and the residents for success. And the West Boulevard corridor, this came in the form of intersection improvements at the I-77 interchange, like that little off-ramp that was a little wonky. We made sure that we lit the bridge, the underpass, as we figured out quickly that it was one of the only underpasses in the city that didn't have adequate lighting. We also are doing an intersection improvement at Western Route and also upgrading the pedestrian lighting. So we know all of these components provide safe ways for people to get to and from. And an interesting part about the West Boulevard and Green Mountain intersection improvement is that we're really leaning into how do we turn that into a public space so that it's not just an area where people whiz by in their cars, casually walk by, but it turns into more of an active gathering space for community.
Erin,
yeah.
Can you hear
Yes.
me? I don't mean to interrupt you, but you said something that just sparked something in me. I know that she was just talking about public space, and we've really been thinking about outside. But as you think about, because you're moving more to a digital platform in some ways, but still have buildings, how do you think about, or have you all been having conversations about how to create space for the community within the building and what that may look like going forward?
So we haven't identified a way to invest in that through the Corners of Opportunity program. However, this is only year 2 of the program, so we do look for opportunities to partner with various organizations that may already have a footprint within the corridor that we may be able to complement or enhance. So really this work is about partnership and leveraging the collective good of all and figuring out what are those critical pieces that resonate with the community and help the community to realize the vision in its 35 years. And one thing I did fail to hopefully understand the digital divide and how we are investing in that as city infrastructure, and we have deployed a free access to Wi-Fi program through the city of Charlotte to help address that need.
And just while I'm here, quick shout out to Shiloh Baptist Church and William Neely and Do Greater. They do a lot of great work there. Yes. Stephanie? Go ahead, Jared.
All right, and I see that we're at 7:05, so I'm going to move a little quickly out of respect for everyone's time and not wanting to hog all of the airspace. So our second theme is strengthening community. We really want to strengthen the connections amongst residents and business owners and stakeholders. We realize that a strong and connected community is a great community. So we do that. We're doing that by way of investing in the development of a merchant organization so that all of our businesses are working together, and we see some economic mobility and economic movement amongst our small business owners, which we know really supports our Charlotte economy in a big way. We're also doing public space activation, and like I said, incorporating that into our infrastructure project. So it's not just a transportation project, it is how are we opening the space to be a gathering space, but also being and have that space to reflect the culture and vibrancy of the corridor as a whole. In addition, the city has work to develop a job strategy so that we can reduce barriers to employment, and you will hear more about that coming down the pipeline in our workforce development community. So if you don't log into community meetings, you might want to start because it's going to be fun. And lastly, we don't want to invest just for today. We want to invest for tomorrow and into the future. We want to ensure that we are setting up generations to come with success. So we are supporting the West Boulevard Neighborhood Coalition in just general capacity building and making sure that we're able to keep Jordan Brooks on as our executive director, because she is really championing a lot of the positive things that are coming out of the community and holding the city accountable for how we should be partnering with the neighborhood coalition, with the residents to help move the U.S. forward. In addition, we're supporting the Three Sisters Market as they work to bring that idea to fruition at the interchange of Clinton Road. So we are here to be good partners and make sure that they have the funding available to keep going down the planning road so that we can see that come to life. And lastly, but not least, we are also, again, working to ensure that through all of these projects, we are weaving in all of the cultural history and vibrancy of the West Boulevard corridor, so that's not lost in the process of bringing in all of these new and shiny things. So as I say, all of this, it's really hard to conceptualize what does this look like in action. So on your screen, you'll see the intersection of West Boulevard and Readout. And we have that updated plaza where we have that public meeting space. There was a lack of bus shelters on the West Boulevard corridor until you got to about Point Road. So we are deploying 2 new bus shelters that will have public art components that's done by a local artist. In addition, the Jack in the Box is still currently for sale, but as they look to find a buyer, as the owner of the parcel looks to have a buyer for that, we will look to partner and make sure that we're activating that outside space with like a cafe or outdoor dining options. In addition, we have signal cabinets that are being wrapped to display again, that art and culture and history, which through the public process we've learned is very important to the residents along the corridor. Corridors of Opportunity doesn't replace the city's normal program. So we still have our business matching grant program, our facade program, our security program. So wherever it's appropriate and applicable, we layer all of those things together to really have our dollars to stretch and go a little further. So a few notable successes for the West Boulevard corridor. We've completed a public space master plan, so we've worked with community members to identify what are those public spaces and how can we activate them going into the future. We've allocated over $5 million for the West Boulevard corridor, and we're not done yet. There's still a few things that need to be completed, and we're looking to do those things as we move into FY22 according to the city's fiscal year. And again, really supporting the Food Systems Market and the West Boulevard Neighborhood Coalition. That is something that's a little bit new and unique to the West Boulevard corridor. So these steps aren't necessarily important. We are moving right along. West Boulevard isn't the only corridor. So this screen is the most important. West Boulevard and Betty's Ford were the first two corridors that we identified that were ready for implementation projects. So they were first up to bat. While we were identifying those implementation projects for West Boulevard and Betty's Ford, we started in on engagement work for I-85 Sugar Creek and Central Albemarle. So over the next few months, you'll start to hear about playbooks coming out of those two corridors, and they will then move into the implementation phase as well. Lastly, we have the North Tryon and Fran and the Freedom Wilkinson corridors. So as we wrap up playbooks for I-85 Sugar Creek and Central Albemarle, we will then begin on that engagement process for the two remaining corridors. So I just like to show this slide for folks to understand that it's a very strategic process and it's pretty methodical in how we approach the corridors of opportunity. To try to figure out things to do in all six all at the same time would have been quite impossible for one person to manage. So we have kind of broken it down into chunks, but we do know we'll have funding available over these fiscal years, going through fiscal year 23, to ensure we're able to implement meaningful and impactful projects within our corridors of opportunity. So that is that is probably all of the slides that are the most relevant for our conversation today. And I thank you guys for your time.
Thank you so much, Terry. There's a lot of work going on. We can see. Does anybody have any questions, comments in regards to what we've seen so far? Yep.
Hi, I was a little disappointed when Nationsport Road in Arrowwood was not chosen as one of the 6 corridors of opportunity. And you might have said this, but you were a little muffled, and I'm old, and I didn't understand everything you said. But can you tell me what criteria was used to choose the 6 corridors?
So in partnership with the Planning Department, Economic Development, and our Data and Analytics Office, all 6 of these corridors were identified as areas that were at a very, very high risk of displacement. So when you think about corridor revitalization and corridor stabilization, through the mix of our programs, I mentioned at the beginning that it was very important that we figured out how to keep long-term residents where they were if they chose to stay where they were. So these are not the only 6 areas within the city of Charlotte that could use some additional help, but these were the 6 that filtered to the top. So not to say that Nationsport and Arrowwood isn't a corridor that could use some additional love and attention. These were the first 6. So it is our hope that through this program we're able to demonstrate success and still identify other corridors as we move through future years.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Also, Cherry, I don't know if this was part of your visual aids, but we've got a map in here with District 3 areas of high displacement. So a little bit to what she was speaking of, if you want to stop by and just take a look at the map after the program and get an idea of where you live and what that means in terms of displacement, this is here and available.
Hey, I'm Angela Edwards again. The West Boulevard corridor. Before I moved to Nation Ford Road, I was at Reed Park, and me and Ricky, I was still was the assistant association there, and these things that is now done came to has manifest. I remember they were just on paper, like the Kaboom project helped with that. We sit down in the government center when we did the first phase of the new park. I don't know how far they got with that now, but we was part of that first phase. So, and then, he kept talking about that collage thing and the food and all that stuff. Yeah, all of that was, it was a vision. So this is my question, because me and Ricky, we pushed a lot of stuff. See, one thing we got to understand, people in high places, they had people behind them to push them in some kind of way. I was like, what you said, Velma Lee, I was that pit bull on the front porch that sometimes we went to meetings and people, Ricky was a soft spoken back then, you know. But now I think he's on the one. But there were some meetings we went to, and I said, no, this not right. We can't have this. So you always like Velma say, now I don't, I'm gonna run again against Velma, but it is what it is. It is what it is. She said you always gotta have a pit bull on the front porch. Didn't she say that? So anyway, what we need is we need to get together on Nation Ford Road in Airwood and establish that pit bull again, and maybe we can be recognized. What they say, the squeaky wheel get the oil. Yeah.
Angela's so funny. But no, but you're right. You make a very good point that it's about making sure that your voice is heard collectively, because that's really where, as I think about the West Boulevard Neighborhood Coalition's playbook, that was built on the work that you all had done. And it really took a lot of us being able to come together and say, hey, look, this is what we need. And we're watching, and our representatives and our city staff responded to that. And now we're seeing it come to fruition. So definitely, you're absolutely right.
And by the way, one thing as you're passing the mic, Councilmember Watlington, I do need to give credit where credit is due. And my mama taught me that you always respect the elders. So let's be very clear. West Boulevard Neighborhood Coalition really paved the way for this entire playbook process. And if you notice, I've said playbooks for every last quarter, right? West Boulevard, a part of the reason why it was first up for implementation, they started a playbook a year before we even did Corridors of Opportunity as a program and had funding allocated for the program. And this was because residents, and Mr. Ricky was definitely one of those residents, came to the planning department in the city of China and said, we need a document that clearly articulates the vision that we see for our corridor. And then our planning department said, okay, if you want to do it, we need you guys to do this, and this. And I don't know if they were expecting it or not, but the coalition did it. And once the coalition did it, it was like, all right, rubber to the road, let's get this document in place and really figure out how we can keep the ball moving down the field. So a part of every playbook is an implementation table that is created in collaboration with it. And that implementation table brings in the goals that were identified during that playbook process. And we start to lay out those goals and what is a realistic time frame for those goals to be realized. So every project on Corridors of Opportunity or that was listed during the budget process, it may not be able to be funded out of the Corridors of Opportunity budget, but it is still housed within that implementation table. And I personally keep up with that implementation table to make sure that we're still tracking along, that we're bringing the right people to the table, and understanding who's responsible for what. So I haven't met you in person. I will say a personal thank you to those that put in all of that hard work to get us where we are today.
Thank you, Cherry. And I see that we've got about 15 minutes left. So I've got two questions here in the room, and then I'd like to hear our UDO update. Thank you to Laura and Alan on that. I see sitting in the room here is Jamal Kennard, who's the executive director of the Lakeview Neighborhood Alliance and also one of the board members for the Westside Community Land Trust, who's working with RJ, who's on every board in this city. But as we're talking about community impact and community voice, I just wanted to give you a moment to speak a little bit about the work that's going on just to our north over in Lakeview, if you don't mind standing up. For the viewers.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share. As you mentioned, my name is Jamal Kennard. Over in Lakeview, we believe that people are not poor because they lack good services and programs. People are poor because they lack power. And the only way that we can get power back to the people, begin to share that power, is by building organization. It's one thing to mobilize, that's the protesting, that's challenging power. But how in the world are we going to begin to advocate for the things that we protest and we don't have organization? I think we have to build community organizations, what we call community impact organizations. Impact stands for individuals making progress and change together. So with us being the backbone organization of Lakeview, we organize residents, stakeholders. Now we can get those resources and funds in to do the things that we have in our strategic plan that were created by residents. Residents tell me, Jamal, we in survival mode. I don't have time to go to no meeting. I'm more tired when I get home. I'm riding the bus. I got to get grandma ready, get kids ready for school. So us being an organization, we can stand in on their behalf, get the information. We have a liaison, understanding the challenges, and then we connect them to resources while also advocating for Lakeview's growth and renewal. So two-pronged approach, and I'll sit down. Number one, short-term responses. We got to connect people to resources. I think somebody talked about that. We got to get people out of survival mode so their minds can be unlocked to think about the future. If you're in survival mode, you reject community and focus on self. At the same time, long-term strategic of building an ecosystem that can really wrap people and shift the paradigm from trying to make it out of our communities to get your skills, get your degrees, come back and invest in your community. So we believe we're building a blueprint in Lakeview that can be duplicated across the city and hopefully across the nation. And we live by three main principles. We must engage with each other in order to be educated about each other's problems so that we can empower each other to move forward in the future. Let's make history now together. Thank y'all.
And one follow-up question. You all are partnering with your neighborhood church. Which one is it?
Faith Memorial Baptist Church. The pastor is former Superintendent Dennis Williams. He's been pivotal, and that church has been pivotal to us. Their houses right now is our headquarters, and we run a lot of programs through there. So big shout out to Dr. Dennis Williams and the Faith Memorial Baptist Church community for allowing us to be a part of their congregation and them being a part of our community.
Thank you. And just before we go to our UDO, you had a question?
Thank you. I had a question for Sherry. My name is Chauncey Hutchinson. I'm a new resident to Enderley Park. I just had a question about the corridors. Do you have an estimated time of completion for the first 6 corridors? And then also, how do you define, or what factors define a high risk of displacement?
So I don't have an estimated time frame for completion for all 6 corridors. I understand that this will kind of be an iterative process, right? So we tackle big projects right up front, but that doesn't mean that we don't continue to come in with other smaller projects or gap projects, or we identify an opportunity and say there's a developer or a stakeholder or someone doing something here and we are in a position to partner. So I can't say that it would be an estimated completion date. I imagine that you're probably interested in when we would reach the Freedom Drive area, since you're over in Emberley. So it is anticipated for us to start in on that engagement level work during FY22. I can't exactly tell you what that will look like. I am actively trying to get through the playbook processes for ID5 and Sugar Creek and Central and Albemarle because we do have limited staff capacity. So that's probably one of my largest constraints is I have part of folks still working on Beatty Sport and West Boulevard, mainly our team in general services and CDOT. And then I have our planning department that's really focused on Sugar Creek and Central Albemarle. So I kind of have to go at the pace of staff capacity, but we have an intention of starting in that area and where we'll be in 2022 for the calendar. And then high levels of displacement, that is connected to the 2040 comp plan work. So if you happen to be a little bit familiar with that, or if not, you can visit the 2040 comp plan website. There is a dashboard for the displacement risk for different communities as well. That's online, and all of that is very heavily data focused. and has a lot of components that went into how those areas and those indicators were identified. And I am not a data scientist, and I'm sure I wouldn't do justice at all. But if you link up with Councilmember Watlington, she knows how to get to me, and I can definitely get you to the right person that can explain that in a way that I can't.
Thank you, Cherry. We can get that information to you. So we're going to do two more things, and then we're going to wrap up. We're going to go ahead and go into our UDO update, and then we're going to hit 2-minute items with our panel, okay?
Good evening. We have a slide deck, and I'm Laura Harmon with the Planning Department, and with me is Alan Goodwin, also working on the Unified Development Ordinance. Hopefully someone, great. Thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Watlington, for inviting us to attend tonight. We know that you're kind of near the end of the time, so I'm going to move through this pretty quickly, but we'd be glad to follow up with answers to questions. So we are working on, with the Planning Department and a number of other city agencies, the city's first Unified Development Ordinance. And I'll explain a little bit more about what that means in a minute. First, we'll talk a little bit about the schedule for this. If we go to the next slide.
If you will bear with me one moment, Zoom crashed.
I will wait. We can do our 2-minute. Oh, RJ, you got a question?
On Saturday, the West Boulevard Neighborhood Coalition is having their 4th annual Legacy Festival. That's going to be at the Arbor Glen Outreach Center on Clinton Road. And also from 4 to 6, actually right next door, the Westside Community Land Trust is also launching the People's Porch, which is a gathering space here in the community.
It's going to be awesome. We can go around for 2-minute items. If you have events coming up, how can folks catch you all with your activities and keep up with you, social media, etc.?
All right, cool. So first of all, I'll start off by giving a major shout out to the Next Level Spartans. That's one of the community football teams that we have adopted in the Steel Creek area. Their coach is doing some great things in that program. There are many great programs. I just happen to be a Spartans fan, so want to shout them out because they're taking care of some of the students in the community, doing a great thing. As I previously stated, the weekend of November the 6th, that's a Saturday, we will be having our fall festival. And also that weekend, we'll be celebrating our 2nd anniversary at the location. So I certainly want to invite all my new pastor brothers. I know them. They probably don't know me because I'm the rookie on the block, if you will. But certainly I look forward to serving and getting to know you guys. We just like to have fun. And one of my favorite slogans is that at the end of the day, we all we got. We gotta work together. Got to help each other out. And if we do, we can accomplish all of our goals, and all of our families can live in this city with peace and happiness.
Absolutely. Glad to be here and enjoyed all of the dialogue. Look forward to working at somebody asked earlier about how could you help, but I think we as a community do better helping one another, even as pastors, and not kind of creating our own silos. As my brother right here, supporting one another, and look forward to those opportunities as well. All of our information is on SteelCreekWorships.org, and I look forward to continuing not this conversation, but this relationship.
And likewise, we're definitely looking to partner with many of you, and of course, beginning a new partnership with these pastors here. Our website is mchca.org, and we're also on Facebook and Instagram as well. I can be reached at hcrump, C-R-U-M-P, at mchca.org as well. And I'd love to hear and receive as much information as possible so we can begin this wonderful partnership. And thank you, Madam woman, for this wonderful gathering tonight.
I'll see you Saturday at the event in our community together. The 704 Kings that I mentioned earlier today, the Mentor Group, has an event at Albemarle Road Elementary School on October the 9th, Saturday, October the 9th from 5 to 7. Where we'll re-engage with some of the folks that we're mentoring with and invite other folks to be mentored and continue a relationship there. So look forward to seeing you there. We're at St. Mark's, stmarksclt.com, and look forward to you visiting. We got enough.
Okay.
He just borrowed some of mine, that's all. We're at progressivebaptistonline.com, and I can be reached at pastor@pdcnetwork.org. Again, I look forward to fellowshipping and partnershiping. Again, Center 360 is the youth group that meets with us. They mentor ages from 5th to 8th grade. I'm a firm believer it's easier to bend the tree when it's young, because when it's old, you have to break it. And so that's why they focus on that age group. And so if you know children in our community in that age group, please email me so I can help them out.
Thank you so much. I know it's 7:30 now. We are going to deliver the information from the UDO because I know folks tuned in for that. But I just want to say thank you so much, pastors, for coming tonight and sharing what you're doing with the community. I look forward to a continued partnership. I love that there's already some camaraderie here, and I look forward to whatever I can do on behalf of the city to help partner with you all. I look forward to doing that. So I understand if you got to cut out. I know we end at 7:30, but we're going to go ahead and continue with the UDO for the benefit of folks that are watching and who come online. So you're welcome to stay, or if you got to go, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Watlington, ready for us to keep going?
If you would, please, Laura.
All right. I know that this slide's a bit hard to follow, so if we can go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the schedule for the UDO. It will be released the initial draft will be released next Thursday, a week from today. And we will have community engagement, opportunities to comment on the first draft through the middle of January. We'll work on a second draft, opportunities to comment on that again. We'll be going then to City Council and Planning Commission, and for City Council for public hearing, Planning Commission for recommendation, and back to City Council for a decision. Our goal is to have the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, adopted by July of next year. Next slide, please. So there was reference earlier to the comprehensive plan that was adopted in June of this year. And that's a policy plan talking about how our community should grow and change physically over the next 20 or so years. What the unified development are the regulations, the development regulations that are one of the ways that we help to implement the comprehensive plan. So if you're familiar with zoning regulations or subdivision regulations or our tree ordinance or some of our stormwater ordinances, those will all be consolidated into the Unified Development Ordinance, one set of regulations. Next slide, please. So again, why are we doing this and why we've been working on this for quite a while now is the UDO will be the primary regulatory tool for implementation of the Charlotte Future 2040 plan that I mentioned. Will provide everyone more predictability for development in the future. We'll align our development regulations so they work better together. We're updating the development regulations based on what are the best practices, what are the best things people are doing throughout the country. Again, everything in one ordinance and all like topics in the same place, so it's easier to find and work with, more user-friendly, and also making sure we're complying with state law. Next slide. So who has been working on this so far? has been planning department staff, but also staff from a number of other departments within the city, including economic development, housing and neighborhood services, Charlotte Department of Transportation, Charlotte Water, and stormwater services, a wide range of city staff and also some county staff that we've been working on. We have had an advisory committee we've been taking concepts to. We have a consultant that is helping and to develop the draft, and we've also had legal review. And this really ends up being a large balancing act. We're really trying to make all these regulations work together. We're making sure that we can do that and have the cost of development be feasible, but also deliver the kind of community that we'd all like to see, and that was explained through the 2040 plan. So we're really trying to balance a wide range of interests. Next slide. So when you look at the UDO that comes out next week, you'll see obviously introductory provisions, but then a large part of it will be related to zoning districts, what uses are allowed in different places, what are your development standards. There will be regulations on subdivision, streets and infrastructure, stormwater and natural resources, and then how the UDO will be administered and how approvals for development will occur. So if you're familiar with the rezoning process, for example, it will talk about how the rezoning process works and how the regulations related to that. Next slide. I won't go through all of this, but we'll say that in the comprehensive plan, there are place types which explain what different areas should develop like. And one of them, for example, the first one you see on the slide is manufacturing and logistics, what you might think of as our industrial areas. The comprehensive plan talks about how those areas should develop. And then through the UDO, we'll have 2 zoning districts, ML1 and ML2, that will actually deal with that actually provide the zoning regulations for how those areas will develop. So we're in lockstep with the comprehensive plan and our zoning districts. Next slide. Next slide. We also have residential zoning districts. You'll see more of that next week. And if you go to the next slide, we also have some special purpose and overlay districts as well. And if you go to the following slide, engagement, we're really excited to be to the point of much broader engagement in the Unified Development Ordinance. So how can you learn about the UDO? How can you participate? We have a website, charlotteudo.org. You can go there. You can sign up for updates. We'll have videos and information as we post this, and we'll be adding to it over the next month or so, a lot of information. We invite you to go there and see that. We will have a number of community meetings and extensive public comment opportunities. Those will be also listed on the website. Our community meetings will be both virtual and in person. So we're trying to give, in this time of COVID, lots of opportunities for people to choose how they want to participate. Watch social media if you're on Nextdoor, Facebook. We will, as we create different drafts, we will redline the documents so everyone can see what's changing and what between different drafts. So you'll see new text in red in subsequent documents. We'll continue to work with the advisory committee, the UDO advisory committee, to get their feedback as we're hearing public comments and consolidating them. So we invite you again to go to charlotteudo.org and subscribe for updates and come out to our meetings or participate virtually in the upcoming months. Next slide.
Laura, I've got a question for you. This is
Certainly.
Can you make it very plain for those watching when the UDO is adopted, what that means for the existing rezoning process, specifically conditional rezonings? I know that we're still working on drafts, but I want folks to make sure they understand why this is important so that they engage.
Sure. So conditional rezonings will not necessarily go away. I know that story is out there and people are concerned about that. But a lot of what we negotiate through a conditional rezoning, for folks who are familiar with that, are things that we think should be basic standards in the ordinance. We shouldn't have to negotiate on a number of these items. They should be coming with any development. So not to go too far into the weeds, but some transportation improvements. You have to go through a transportation study, potentially with a conditional rezoning. That will be required on projects that meet a certain threshold regardless. So I think that what we'll see is simpler conditional rezonings when we see them, maybe fewer, because some of our zoning districts will just be better districts than what we have now. Our zoning ordinance is 30 years old, and it was put together for a different kind of city. So hopefully we won't always have to have conditional rezonings, but where the community and the council feels that that's appropriate, we'll continue to see conditional.
Thank you, Laura. Go ahead.
Sure. Just real quickly, recap of next steps. Again, we'll be releasing the draft a week from today. This is the first draft of 4, so it is the starting point, not the ending point. We want to make sure everyone knows that, and there will be lots of opportunity for discussion. Again, those community meetings and through early January, and comments through January 14th, the first draft, and again, updates on the UDO website. And I think that is our final slide, other than just any questions or comments. We'd be glad to answer them.
We've got a question here from our District 3 Planning Commissioner, RJ Harvey.
Thank you. Laura, can we talk about ways for any of the pastors or any of the other community groups to sign up for some of the community engagement meetings? Because, of course, there's a lot of this language thrown around, comp plan, UDO, and really what we want to do is being able to break this down to something that people can understand. Basically, what are they going to see when they walk outside of their doors? So can we figure out a way to kind of loop these folks into the conversation?
We would love to do that. And if someone could provide us the names of the pastors and certainly any attendees tonight that are interested, we would be glad to notify folks of what's going on. We'd be glad to, time permitting, meet with them individually, definitely in groups. Any way that we can get the word out. We know that this is particularly the Unified Development Ordinance. We know that it's very technical, and we want to make this as understandable for folks that are not doing this all day long as we can. So we'd also love feedback from folks that can help us with that, can say, hey, it'd be easier to understand if you said this way. So we'd also appreciate that from the pastors and others who are used to working with the community in a different way than we are.
Yeah, you hold it. Listen, the rezoning and all that good stuff, does that have anything also to do with the transportation piece about neighborhoods who needs a bus to go back into the neighborhood where it used to go in the neighborhood, but now it's not? And these poor people in my neighborhood, they have to walk so far to Family Dollar, you know what I'm saying? But there's no store around there if they got no transportation.
That's a good question. That's come up a couple times in that area.
It's certainly a very valid concern. That's not directly related to the Unified Development Ordinance, but is related to where CAT sends their buses. So sure that staff and, we can certainly get you contacts, or other staff at the meeting and online can also do the same. We'd be glad to help with that if needed.
that does fall under the overall comp plan and our transformational mobility network. So that's another strategy that falls into this that we'll be giving more information about. All righty. Well, I certainly appreciate you all coming out tonight. That concludes our session today. Thank you again to Freedom Communities, Tech Opportunity Hub, CLT Geek, and Daniel Pentecost. Thank you for all of our pastors and to CMPD for coming out to support, and for all of you. If you need me, I can be reached at victoria.watlington@charlottenc.gov. Y'all have a good one. Thanks. And please eat.